Hey everybody, Mark from tenttable.com. Hope everyone's having an outstanding season so far. I know here in Buffalo, New York, the sun is shining, the phone is ringing. We're in one of our former rental stores right now that we sold last year to a couple of our managers, and I figured today I would talk a little bit about generators and inverters. This time of year we get a lot of questions, and I'll tell you, I have people saying, hey, I just bought a blower, it's not working, I'm plugging it into my generator, it's blowing circuit breakers, and I just want to give a little bit of insight on, what you should be using, what worked for us in our rental departments. And, if you look here, we have some different generators, we have different inverters. I'll start with inverters first, okay? Inverters are a newer thing to the market than generators, okay? They are gaining a lot of traction because, number one, they're incredibly quiet, okay? I could be running an inverter standing next to it and I'm really not even gonna hear it running. But they're also very confusing because, what they're great for, electronics, if you're running DJ equipment, you're running any sort of sensitive electronic equipment, they run on a very, very, very even sine wave. Whereas with a generator, you are going to get some power surges, but it's also a little bit deceiving because, in our industry, we're taking a blower and, every blower should be run on a minimum of a 15 or 20 amp dedicated circuit. So you might look at this inverter, okay? This is a Mighty M 3500 maximum wattage, okay? If you look at how it's configured, I've got one duplex receptacle and I've got one NEMA 30 amp receptacle. Now, just because it has two plugs doesn't mean you can run two blowers off of it. You're gonna get one blower off of a unit like this. You might be able to plug a string light or something minimal into the other, but remember, whether it's an inverter or a generator, one duplex receptacle is really only one 20 amp circuit. How do you get 3,500 watts out of a unit like this? You're going to need to have some sort of adapter to take this R30 twist lock and turn it into a regular duplex receptacle. I'll show that when we go into our larger units, but basically here is a cord that's going to take a twist lock 4-prong and break it out into two more 20 amp circuits. So when you're running an inverter, okay, this is going to run one blower. Maybe it's going to run one cotton candy machine or one popcorn machine. If you utilize your twist lock, you're going to get a second circuit out of it, okay? The one thing is you don't have the same amount of surge you have in a inverter as you will in a generator. So when you're looking at a generator that, they say this is a 4,500 watt generator, it's really only 3,600 running watts. When you're starting any type of an induction motor or any motor, you're going to have a momentary power surge. So, if I was running two blowers off of this inverter, okay, I would have my twist lock NEMA coming down to one outlet. I would plug one blower into here, one blower into this. I would get my blower up to speed, get that unit inflated. Once it's inflated, you're going to be running on a lower amperage because you have back pressure. Then I would power on the second. Okay, here's a little bit larger inverter. It's really, this particular one here, same thing though. 120 amp circuit, 123 amp circuit. So this is also a 3,000 watt inverter. This one is a Honda, larger unit, but running the same amount of power, okay? Here's a 1,000 inverter, okay? you might get one blower running off of this. And it, you know, convenient. I've run a bounce house off of a 1,000-watt inverter. They're nice and light. They're very quiet. But you got to remember, you're only going to be running one blower. So even when you get into some of the larger inverters, they're making inverters out there now that are going to be, you know, 6,000 watt, 7,000 watt. A 6,000 watt inverter might have 2 duplex receptacles, but that's only 2 blowers. Again, one motor driven unit off of one side of the receptacle. Disadvantage to inverters, a lot of time is the cost, okay? An inverter is going to cost typically about 2 times the price of a generator. And that's even if you're looking at, I know Harbor Freight has got a lot of generators out there. I see a lot of chatter out there on the sites about Predator generators from Harbor Freight. They've gotten much better over the years. You know, when they first came out, I found them to be fairly unreliable, but now they're a player in the generator market. They're at a good price, okay? But again, just understand the limitations. Just because it has 4 plugs doesn't mean you can use all 4, okay? You're always going to need to be breaking down your power out of your twist lock. Now, a 3 twist lock is a basically a NEMA 30 amp outlet, okay? When you get into a generator, I'll show you the 4s are going to be a little bit different. So now let's take a look at a couple generators, okay? Here's a 3,200 watt generator, all right? I'm gonna say that this is gonna be similar to that 3,500 watt inverter, okay? But when you're picking up a generator, you're gonna find it is about half the price. Inverters, again, quiet, fairly long run time, but a lot of times if you're in a busy event rental business, okay, you can buy 2 generators to 1 decent size inverter. Here we have a 7,500 watt, okay, this is powered by a Honda motor. Here's where I think it gets a little bit more important, okay? Now, most generators that are going to be 5,000 watts and above are going to have 2 duplex receptacles on them. Here's one here and one here, okay? You'll also notice circuit breaker and circuit breaker. So those are 2 separate circuits. So on a 5,500 watt generator, 7,500 watt generator, you're going to be able to run considerably more off that than you would off of your inverter. If I take a storm cord like this, that's gonna plug into this 4-way twist lock, I've got 2 circuit breakers, and if you notice, it's breaking it down into 4 separate outlets, okay? 2 are striped, 2 are not striped. Circuit 1, circuit 2. So off of this generator, 4 blowers. 32, 2 blowers. Always look at what the maximum wattage and running power is, because it's 7,500 running watts, even though I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 physical plugs to plug into, I'm only at 7,500 running watts. 1,500 watts to 2,000 watts per blower, it's still only 4 running watts, okay? I'm gonna get, you know, 3 blowers off of that. You know, here's a 6,500 watt. 6,500 running watts, 8,100 starting watts, okay? This unit here is going to be able to effectively run 4 blowers, because I'm going to have a 40 amp twist lock and I'm going to have 2 duplex receptacles. So one of the biggest things that I see is people do not take the time and invest in their NEMA twist lock storm cords like this here. Okay, and there's a couple reasons that storm cord is important to use, because generators run better when they're maxed out. You know, you're exercising the entire motor or armature, okay? So if you're consistently just running off of the 2 duplex receptacles, you're only getting half the power out of it. And you're actually going to treat the generator alternator better if you were running 1 blower, 2 blower, 3 blower, and 4 blower. Ground your generator. You know, get a brass rod, get a piece of copper wire, go from here to the rod, pound it into the ground. That's the safest way to run any generator, especially in moisture damp areas, so you're not worried about any sort of a ground fault. And when you're doing that, you know, you're sitting there and you're running a 3-prong plug into your generator. You're using a grounded extension cord. If you're not grounding the generator, what's the point? Regardless of what size, you're going to find there's always going to be some sort of a grounding lug that you should use a brass rod and some sort of copper wire and just ground it. So yeah, you could use it in the rain, but always make sure it's grounded, and just keep in mind that, you know, you're using something that is electric in the rain. You got to take precautions. Personally, I don't think you should be running your bounce houses in the rain, but if you're running a generator for tenting needs or other stuff, you're fine if that generator is getting a little bit wet, as long as you have it properly grounded. Inverters are very, very quiet, whether it's this 3,500 watt, whether it's this 1,000 watt, or I go up into a 6,000 or 7,000 watt. We would be able to be filming right now as I was talking with that generator running next to us. But again, you have power limitations, because, you know, when you're starting your blower motor up, even though the running watts on that blower motor might be 8 or 10 amps, you might surge to 16, 17, or 20 amps momentarily on a startup. Inverters are really not designed to have that type of a power spike, which is why they're really ideal if you're running an RV, you're running electronic equipment, a television. Because it's clean power, the sine wave is clean. It's a digital power. It's a better type of electricity, but it's also not going to have the same surges and capacity that a regular generator motor will.